Right, hello everybody. This morning I am pleased to announce Labour's line-up for the 54th Parliament, a line-up that is going to hold the coalition of chaos to account over the next 3 years. The front bench includes a mix of very experienced and newer former ministers who are going to bring the skills and energy we need to those jobs into their portfolios. We've got roughly 3 times more ministerial experience in our top 20 than National, New Zealand First and ACT combined. There are 6 women and 4 men in our top 10. It's a diverse lineup, and the front bench includes significant portfolios like climate change and children. It took 40 days and 40 nights, but we finally have a government to hold to account. I'm looking forward to every one of our MPs getting stuck in. I'd like to thank all of our MPs in the Labour team for the energy they've brought already this week, for their support and for putting their hands up for these roles. What we've seen from the other side already is a lack of moral compass, a depressing laundry list that undoes progress and takes New Zealand and Kiwis backwards. This Labour team has the values, the energy and the experience to hold the other side to account on that, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing. We're under no illusion, though, that we've got a big job ahead to win back the support of our communities. But one thing is for absolute certain: when Christopher Luxon takes away the services people need and rely on, we will be there asking why. So with that, we're now happy to answer your questions.
Why have you dropped some of your key Māori MPs like Kelvin, Adrian and Dino? Why have you dropped them quite significantly?
Obviously Adrian, as a former speaker, isn't going to be occupying that role in the current Parliament. Kelvin Davis indicated after the election that he didn't want to be in the front lineup. He wanted to take a step back, but he still believes he has a contribution to make, still wants to be able to make that. And similarly with Reno Tirakatini, he's still in a senior role, he's still a contributing part of our team. In opposition, all MPs have a contribution to make. The lineup that I've just released today shows that every one of our MPs is going to be contributing.
And Damien O'Connor and David Parker, they've dropped quite significantly, 8 and 6 respectively, right to the back end of your top 20. Why is that? Are they on the way out?
No, same answer to what I just gave. Rankings in opposition actually don't matter anywhere near as much as the contribution that you make does. Every one of our teams, every one of our 34 MPs has a contribution to make. I've been in opposition before, that's a matter of record. I've seen MPs from some of the lowest rankings make some of the biggest contributions to the opposition effort. I fully expect that every one of our 34 MPs is going to be contributing fully.
Could you just
clarify?
Willie Jackson has made his life on the ambition of being the top ranked Māori in your team. Is that an indication that he will be staying for the whole term?
Well, I'll let Willie speak for himself in a moment, but of course I've got huge confidence in Willie. He's a passionate advocate for Māori communities. He's an integral member of our team. I have full confidence in him, and I know that he's ready and willing to take the fight to National, ACT and New Zealand First. Willie?
Yes. What was the question? Sorry, Claire.
Best answer you've ever given.
You've committed to the whole term.
Well, yes, well, at the moment I'm committed to the whole term.
At the moment.
Okay.
All right, Jason.
What does that mean, just in terms of Kelvin Davis's future? He said that if he didn't win his seat, he'd be resigning, and then he said that he'd only stick around for the referendum on the treaty, and it doesn't look like that. Well, it's up in the air about that, if it's going to happen. Has he given you any sort of indication if he's going to stay the entire term?
I'm not going to make any announcements on behalf of anybody else, other than that as long as everybody is here, as long as the 34 members of Parliament we have are in the team, I'm going to make sure they're busy, and I'm going to make sure that we're harnessing their skills and their talents.
And has anybody approached you and said that they would be stepping down at some point in the near future?
Nobody has confirmed. Obviously, after in a period of time like this, after an election loss, there'll be people who want to take the summer to contemplate that. But nobody has given a firm timeline for making decisions on that.
Who's taking the summer? Who's going to?
I'm not going to get into that.
There are people
thinking
about
yes.
what you considered when you were divvying out these portfolios was who each MP might be going up against in the House. Did that come into consideration, for example, David Parker versus Winston Peters?
I did consider, that was one of the things that I thought about. I obviously looked at who the lineup is on the other side, but also how the portfolios are structured, where they're placed within the government and so on. And I considered that in the overall balance. I can't say that it was a direct match, in every portfolio area, though.
Winston Peters, I think, and I could be wrong on this, has previously talked about his respect for David Parker. So was that part of your thinking in assigning him foreign affairs?
Well, foreign affairs is an area where we have previously tried to represent a New Zealand Inc. view to the rest of the world. And so if we can keep a positive relationship with the government in that area, there will be areas where we disagree, inevitably, but if we can keep a positive relationship there, I think that would be a good thing.
So the relationship between David Parker and Winston Peters did factor into your decision making with that?
Certainly it was a conversation that I had with David Parker.
You've
Yeah.
got David Seymour setting up a whole new ministry, Ministry of Regulation, taking a whole new portfolio. Why not give that to one of your top 10?
I've indicated that Duncan Webb is going to take on that responsibility for us. I know that Duncan is forensic in the sort of work that he does, and I think that he's just the right person to really scrutinise the actions that David Seymour's taking in that portfolio.
Why have you, what did Jan Tinetti do? You've dropped it from 6 to 10.
But look, it's just a reflection of making sure that I've got all of the portfolios represented in the top 10 lineup that I want to get represented in the top 10 lineup, and that we've got the balance right there. I've got full confidence in Jan. She's an excellent education spokesperson, was an excellent Minister of Education, and I'm confident will be an excellent Minister of Education in the next Labour government as well.
But you've promoted the likes of Jan, though. Demoted the likes of Jan, but then you also, moved Kieran up 9 places. You even moved Ginny up 8 places, despite the bullying allegations that have come out against her. Why?
I think if you look at the balance of portfolios on the front bench, people are playing different roles. Kieran is going to be our shadow leader of the House, so that brings him into the higher ranks of the lineup, because it's the lineup reflects the responsibilities people have in different areas. As I've indicated, I'm going to be rating people based on the contributions that they make. You'll note there's no numbers on this page, and that's deliberate for a reason. Everyone here has a contribution to make.
Why are we taking revenue off Barbara Edmonds and giving it to Deborah Russell? Barbara Edmonds was Minister of Revenue for only a few months.
Barbara's going to have her work cut out for her in terms of the work she's going to be doing around economic development, around working with Grant in the finance portfolio. Deborah Russell is also an expert in revenue, and I've got full confidence in her doing the work that needs to be done in that portfolio.
In terms of the speakership, the National Party have indicated that they want to put Jerry Brownlee forward for that. Is that a motion that you will be supporting, Jerry Brownlee as Speaker?
It was my intention to invite Jerry Brownlee to come and speak to the Labour caucus. The Labour caucus ultimately makes the decision as to who they're going to endorse for Speaker. And so, I'll invite him to come and speak to the caucus before we make that decision.
And you will expect him to essentially show up and make his case to the Labour caucus? Well,
if he would like us to, obviously he's got the numbers to be the Speaker, but if he would like to get cross-party support from that, then I'd encourage him to come and make his case.
Why is that important? It seems like it's a bit of an unusual move.
Well, no, it's not an unusual move at all. Trevor Mallard, before he became the Speaker, went to speak to the National Caucus. David Carter, before he became the Speaker, came into this room when it was then the Labour caucus to make his case as well. And I believe, if my memory stretches all the way back, I think Lockwood Smith did the same. That is not unusual. The Speaker's job is not to be the government's nominee to be Speaker. It is to be Parliament's person. And I think it's important that they make an effort to reach out to Parliament. If someone being nominated for that role makes an effort to reach out to the other parties in Parliament to answer their questions and to give them reassurance that they will be there for the whole of the Parliament.
How is climate change going to work with Megan Woods' portfolio with James Shaw, crystallising described him as the opposition climate change spokesperson? He's going to COP. So how will?
Well, the Labour Party is the opposition, and Megan Woods is the opposition spokesperson for climate change. The Green Party is a different party, and we do not have a formal relationship with the Green Party in opposition.
Well, how does that work that James Shaw is going to COP?
I think it was an interesting decision by the government not to include the opposition spokesperson in the lineup that was being sent to COP. That is ultimately a decision that the incoming government have taken. It's not consistent with the decision previous governments have taken.
Was there any consultation on that? Did you talk to the government?
I'm not aware of any consultation that's taken place on that.
If Labour's serious about climate change, would you?
We haven't had that conversation, but I wouldn't rule it out. But there's obviously a significant cost to travel to COP. COP's actually very difficult to get to at short notice because of everything gets booked out.
You've got children and you've got sexual violence on your front bench, and so you're still weighting those portfolio extremely heavy, in spite of the fact that the coalition government has got those portfolios out of cabinet.
I think issues around young people, so whether it's education, whether it's children, youth, these are incredibly important to the future of our country, and so you do see that whole cluster of issues being quite highly rated in the lineup that I've just announced.
Because of the Lady Manuel, she appears to be last on this list. Is that a slight to the electorate? She's your only candidate to win a Māori seat?
No, not at all. It just reflects the fact that, as in keeping with almost every past precedent, brand new MPs tend to start as sort of the last on, but that can change quite quickly.
And to Willie Jackson, how tough the next 3 years is it going to be for you and your portfolio in comparison to what the coalition government is wanting to roll out?
Oh, we're very clear
Come up, Willie.
we're clear that we've got a job to do in terms of supporting Māori aspirations. Really proud of some of the kōrero that's gone out from our leader over the last week or so in support of Te Ao Māori. So, we're seeing all the attacks from smoke free right across the spectrum. Looks like a referendum in disguise that they're putting up. So we know as a Māori team that we've got a job to do, and I'm really proud of the members who've been put in there, 5 Māori members in the top 20, and we're united in terms of our strategy going forward. So,
what kind of a reception do you think Tama Pōtaka is going to get from Māori, considering the attacks, the fast rollout of attacks against the policies of the coalition government? How do you think he's going to be received?
Well, he's got a lot on him. You've got to remember he's got portfolios that were held by myself, Calvin Davis and Penny Henare, and they've given him everything. So I don't know how he's going to cope. He's a good man, Tama. He's been a friend to many of us, but that's going to change once the house starts.
Well, what do you make of Māori who say they actually don't know him? So I spoke with Lady Tūreiti Moxham, who said she's only met him once. They live in the same rohe. She's never met him on the streets. He isn't someone that actually has moved around Te Ao Māori in an extensive way.
Well, he's a young man with a lot of talent. I know Tama well, I know his whānau well, but he's going to have a lot on him. And as I said, it'll be different once we get into the House. But he's responsible for a lot of work that this caucus has pushed forward, and we're looking forward to defending that once we get back in the House.
Okay.
You mentioned that you're all aligned on the strategy now going forward. Can you shed some light on what that strategy will be?
To defend and attack the opposition. Defend a lot of the kaupapa that we've put up. We're really proud of the work that we put up right across the spectrum in terms of Te Ao Māori. Procurement, whānau ora, the funding. We have to validate and what we did, and we want to defend that, and we will we'll attack the opposition if they come for Māori, which they're clearly signalling that that's their intention.
Mark. Oh, yeah, if you've got a question for Willie, you may as well finish that.
You had said you were considering your future. What made you decide?
A lot of people talk to me in our community, and I was very clear, I think, when we came back that I was considering leaving, but there is I think the strategy against Te Ao Māori probably requires people like myself and Willow Jean. I just want to acknowledge Willow Jean, who's on the front bench. She's a terrific advocate for our people. Penny Henare, Joe Luxon, Calvin Davis is still there. It requires some of us to stay around, otherwise we'll be abandoning the ship. So I've had a number of Māori leaders who've come to me and asked me to hang around, and I've had some good kōrero too with our own leadership. So it's an honour to still be around, and I'm humbled by the position.
And this Te Pāti Māori that they've been trying to rally basically people across the country to mobilise essentially against the current government. Are you looking to work with Pāti Māori, the Greens?
Well, I've had iwi leaders already approach me and Māori leaders across the country in terms of protests that might be coming. So, with respect to the Te Pāti Māori, the drive has come from people out there, and I think the Te Pāti Māori will be involved, and no doubt we'll be involved also.
What do you make of it?
Okay, Mark.
When you were in government, there were some concerns or maybe complaints about the number of written questions that came in from the opposition. Do you expect to submit fewer than your predecessors in the opposition?
Well, they've certainly got a number of things that they're doing already that deserve a lot of scrutiny. And so I think you can expect to see that in the questions that we lodge and in the OIAs that we're lodging as well.
And you've said that you have no formal relationship with the Greens in opposition. Would you look to sign a memorandum of understanding like Andrew Little did?
Our relationship with them in opposition has generally been quite positive in terms of just, cooperating, but it's not like a formal coalition or a formal arrangement like you would have in government. And of course, where there are opportunities for us to work with the Green Party Te Pāti Māori in opposition to make sure that collectively we're doing the best job possible of holding the government to account and scrutinising the decisions that they're taking, then yeah, we'll continue to do that. But we are each distinct parties.
And the Greens have also released a petition against the repeal of the offshore oil and gas ban. Do you support that petition? Have you signed it?
I haven't seen it, sorry. But, I mean, look, each party is going to run, I think, a number of campaigns in opposition. That's what opposition parties often do. And where we support the campaigns being run by other parties, then we'll look to do that.
You're going back up against Christopher Luxon in the House, albeit sides have switched this time. How are you feeling about that match?
I hope in time he'll get better at answering questions.
You don't think he's very good now?
Well, certainly didn't demonstrate during the campaign either a willingness to answer questions or any real ability to do it.
What's the purpose would you, if they do go ahead with reinstating lifting the ban on offshore oil and gas, would you reinstate that ban in 2026 if you got back in?
Look, we're not announcing our 2026 policies yet. There's still a lot of water to flow under the bridge over the next 3 years. We'll get into announcing in due course what we will do in the next term of government. We're not going to do that on day one of, well, it's not quite day one, day 3, 4 of being opposition.
What's the purpose of the Wellington Issues portfolio? Is there a motivation there to try and win back your tie?
There are a lot of issues facing the people of Wellington over the next 3 years. The Wellington economy will potentially be affected quite significantly by some of the changes the incoming government are proposing to make to public sector spending, for example. That will have an implication not just for those who are directly affected, but actually for everybody living in the Wellington region because of the economic impact that will have. There's a number of big issues facing the region, like water infrastructure, for example, where I think having a coordinated approach from the Labour team will be important. We obviously hold a number of electorates in the Wellington region. Having someone making sure that we're leading out on Wellington issues will be important.
But is it a recognition, though, that you've lost a large chunk of the region?
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think if you look at, we've lost those constituencies, and we'll make decisions on how we're going to approach that in the future. But the portfolio is more focused on the region as a whole rather than individual constituencies.
In terms of the 100-day plan and the 49 policies outlined by the Nats yesterday, is there anything in there that you agree with, that you're going to be supporting the government through, anything that you see the areas of cooperation?
I think there were one or two during the election campaign where I identified that we would be relatively sympathetic. The issues around making sure that people can get access to cold and flu medication, for example, are ones where I indicated during the campaign we were certainly open to having discussions about that. But the balance of the 49 things on their 100-day plan are all about reversing things, taking things back, restoring the previous status quo, rather than actually moving the country forward. So going back to the Resource Management Act, for example, which the National Party spent the better part of 2 or 3 decades complaining about, isn't going to lead the country forward. It simply takes us back.
And in terms of what Chris Luxon said yesterday at Coles Cab around Winston Peters, essentially saying, we're from different parties, people are going to say different things. What do you make of that strategy?
Well, Christopher Luxon set very high standards for ministers in the last government. He doesn't seem to have anywhere near those standards for ministers in his own government. I think what really he announced yesterday was he has no control over Winston Peters. Winston Peters has no respect for him, and there's nothing he can really do about Winston Peters' behaviour. I don't think that's good enough from a Prime Minister.
What did you make of his handling of Winston Peters' allegations of Labour government bribed the media and that sort of thing? How do you think he handled that yesterday?
Very poorly and very weakly. Those are incredibly serious allegations. But more than that, Winston Peters' comments about the media actually don't comply with the requirements of a minister. His implicit directions to TVNZ and RNZ, for example, for well foul of the requirements of a minister not to give direction to those organisations that are editorially independent. And Christopher Luxon has done nothing about it.
Jenny, I can ask you about, during the election campaign, law and order was a big theme. Mark Mitchell constantly attacking you in the House. What's your plan of attack for the police portfolio and going up against Mark Mitchell?
Well, Mark Mitchell has set himself an incredibly high bar. He's gone on record stating that he's up to resigning after 12 months if New Zealand isn't safer. So I'll be making sure we keep close tabs and build that base to follow that closely and hold him to account of some of those promises he's made.
Yeah, and I understand that you have formally apologised after your behaviour on election night. Are you giving any thought towards whether you'd like to stand in that electorate again or whether you'd be better off just as a list MP?
I'm fully committed to staying in Hutt South. That's where my family is, that's where I represent, and I'll continue to being a list MP based out there.
I just want to, I'm going to add a comment here. As a parliament, we've put in place a process where any staff, present or former, who have any concerns can raise those through a confidential process. And as a party, we've put in place a very rigorous and robust complaints process for any party members and volunteers. Any members, volunteers, staff members who have any concerns can raise them through those processes. I don't believe it's in their interests or the interests of the issues that they may be raising for us to debate those issues publicly.
Did the leak come from inside the Labour Party?
I don't know.
And whereabouts is the investigation at?
That's a question for the party. But I should say, I have kept in regular contact with the party, and I have full confidence in Ginny Anderson, and you will see that reflected in the decisions that I've made today.
Is it appropriate then that Ginny Anderson holds these portfolios while those allegations are there? I mean, police, prevention of violence, social investment, associate social development, when those allegations are there?
Look, I considered that in the portfolio allocations. I've got full confidence in Ginny. I think she'll do an excellent job.
Going back to relevant issues, what do you make of the government saying it wants to quickly withdraw from Let's Get Wellington moving?
Well, again, this is one of the reasons why I think it's important that we have a strong voice on Wellington issues, and I know Dr. Verrill will be a very strong advocate for Wellington communities. Ultimately, we've got major infrastructure challenges in the Wellington region, and transport is one of those. The new government have made some pretty big commitments. They have said that within 3 years, construction will be underway on a new Mount Victoria tunnel.
Shouldn't those decisions be independent, well, like under law, they're the independent decisions of NZTA? Shouldn't politicians stop interfering in those funding decisions?
They've campaigned on a additional Mount Victoria tunnel being underway within 3 years.
Just before we go to Willow Jean, Phil Twyford's jumped up by 25 points. Is this his big comeback?
Phil's got experience in opposition, and as I've indicated, I want every one of our 34 MPs contributing. So everyone has been given a portfolio. Everybody is going to be making a contribution, and that includes Phil. He's got a lot of experience in opposition.
Was he just good in opposition but not good in government?
Look, Phil's got a lot to offer the team, and I want to make sure that he's contributing, and he's indicated that he's keen to contribute.
Is this the start of the Phil Nasos?
I'm not sure that word works, so I wouldn't go there.
Luxon wouldn't say yesterday whether he believes those allegations from Winston Peters are true or false. Are they true or false? That the media were bribed?
The incoming government, across a range of areas, seems to be dancing dangerously close to endorsing conspiracy theories. And I think some of the guarded comments that Christopher Luxon made yesterday get very close to that.
And can we get a comment from Aisha Farrell with the Wellington?
We'll
go to Willow. I think Willow. Yep.
Thank you. Kia koe Willow Jean, pehe tō whakaro o te raina tuatahi, and kia hato mahi tuatahi roto i te whare.
Wau he tima tino toa tēnei. I rongo koe ngā kōrero o tō mātou kaiarahi, tō mātou rangatiro o tēnei taha. Etahi te nuinga o mātou I roto I te cabinet I tērā tau, nō reira kei konei ngā pukenga me te hiahia ki te mahi kaha, tūkaha, mō tātou katoa, mō tātou te iwi Māori, mō ngā kaupapa Māori, e kite nei tātou, e rongo nei tātou I ngā kōrero o te kāwanatanga hau. Nō reira, e tino hariko ana hau, kei konei a hau, ki te mahi I tērā mahi.
Pehe tō whakaro o te mahi o te coalition government he wehi te tiriti o Waitangi, te reo I roto I te kamu pene kāwanatanga.
Yeah, he nana kia tērā mahi. E hoki ana hau ki ngā kōrero o aku tupuna, takahia te riri kei raro I o koutou waiwai. Waiho, te tiriti o Waitangi ka kakati te namu I te whairangi o te puka puka. Nō reira, me uki ngā kōrero o ngā tupuna e pāna ki te tiriti o Waitangi me te whakaputanga, he tapu, he kawena ta tapu wera. Nō reira, he nana kia wā rātou mahi ki te whakarereke I tērā mō Aotearoa. Nō reira, kei konei tātou katoa, mātou katoa o te tima reipa, ki te tū kaha, ki te tū pakari mō te tiriti o Waitangi. Me te reo anō hoki.
And I think, Aisha.
Is a question mark?
Just on your reaction to the withdrawal of central government from Muscat Wellington moving, being in that 100-day plan.
Wellingtonians need a strong advocate for many of the policies that the coalition government has announced. I'm determined to hold them to account for fulfilling the transport needs that we have in Wellington, for the climate policies that they're implementing through that, and making sure that we can get around this great city.
Aisha, just one of the first policies of the new government is around lodging a reservation against adopting amendments to WHO health regulations. Do you have any comments on that?
Those health regulations are used to make sure that when there is a disease with pandemic potential, there is an early warning given out across the world. Imagine if that system worked at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, and we didn't have a pandemic. It is incredibly important that we have international health regulations that work. I've been so pleased that Sir Ashley Bloomfield has offered to contribute to that work on behalf of New Zealand after his work leading this pandemic. It is vitally important that we have a strong health system of regulations and that they're scientifically informed. I'll be making sure that none of the conspiracy theories that we hear about on the internet with respect to the WHO seep into New Zealand's approach to those regulations.
Do you have some concerns that that policy essentially come from these conspiracy theories, these cultural wars, and it's a bit of a signal?
As I have said on many of the issues, the coalition formed its agreement behind closed doors, so we can't say why they did that. However, I'm deeply concerned that I see that sort of rubbish about the WHO and international health regulations on the internet, and all of a sudden it's in a coalition document.
What about the repealing the therapeutic goods bill?
Therapeutic products bill.
Products bill, sorry. Yeah, do you have a comment on that?
I would like to hear from the government why they have prioritised that. The Medicines Act is from 1981. We no longer have fit-for-purpose medicines regulations to keep our people safe. I understand that there are a lot of that it's a big act, and we debated a lot the concerns about natural health products in Parliament when the act went through. So I am surprised that the government would want to repeal the entirety of that act that has a lot of bread and butter housekeeping in there to keep New Zealanders access to safe medicines.
Do you think conspiracy theories have seeped into National Act and NZ's policies?
Look, I think ultimately that is a question for them to justify why New Zealanders can't have modern, fit-for-purpose medicine regulation as per the Act that we brought in. And I expect to hear from, I will be holding the government to account on how it is that New Zealanders will have regular, properly regulated medicines in New Zealand.
Is it a coalition of conspiracies?
There certainly seems to be a lot of things in the health area that, that you'll find floating around in the internet and not in any other credible forum.
Do they have the mandate to do this? I mean, if this is coming from NZ First, with the comment that they're only got 6% of the vote, do you think these are fair things that they're focusing on?
Look, ultimately, we have to respect the result of the election, but also the government needs to be able to speak and justify the decisions that it has taken on these quite fringe concerns.
All right. Kieran, why have you lost racing? Are you gutted you've lost racing?
It's more a case of handing it back than losing it. If you look at the other portfolios, there's housing, local government, regional development and shadow leader of the House. It's a pretty massive package. and giving it back to the previous minister seemed to make sense to be honest.
You could have asked me that question.
I was about to ask you whether you were gutted about what they had to do to get you to give up sport and rec.
Yeah, look, it was a long conversation deep into the night with that. No, it was time for someone else to have a crack at that.
Chris, can I just ask you a question? This is from one of our reporters in Auckland. The ICC, the US and other bodies have criticised Israel for worsening violence by Israeli settlers against Palestinians in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. What's your position on this?
I think I set out a week and a half ago the Labour Party position. We want to see an end to the violence as quickly as possible. We do want to see a ceasefire, and that obviously means working towards the conditions for a ceasefire as fast as possible. No one wants to see the violence that we're seeing continue. No one wants to see the escalation that we're seeing continue. Far too many innocent people are being caught up in that violence. We need to see the violence stop.
The new government has barely said anything about the conflict there. Do they need to take a stand?
I think it would be useful to understand, they are now no longer the government in waiting. They are now the government. It would be useful to understand what their position is. Okay, clear.
Transport has gone to Tangi, it's not on your front bench. Can you explain that?
Tangi, I wanted to give him an opportunity to get his teeth into a big portfolio. Transport is a portfolio where I think there is going to be a lot of opportunity for him to scrutinise the actions of the incoming government. So, as I've indicated, what I've tried to do in spreading the portfolios out is make sure that everybody's got some things that they can get their teeth into.
Will it be hard for them to halt light rail?
Look, that's ultimately something that we'll get into in due course. It will certainly result in a lot of wasted money on, the planning and preparation for light rail.
Ms. Hipkins, you seem to be in a pretty good mood today yesterday. What would you put that down to?
It's beautiful weather outside. All right, thanks everybody.
I'm always cheerful and sunny.
Cheaper.